Hello, podcast listeners. This is Mike Chapman, and I have some exciting news. Juan Mejia and I, both certified husband material coaches, will be hosting a men's weekend healing retreat July 11th through the 14th, 2024 in Columbia, South Carolina. For more information, go to polarlifeconsulting.com/retreat. Hope to see you there. Welcome to the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. This is a podcast for male survivors of sexual abuse and assault, whether as a child or as an adult. Know that you are not alone and the abuse was not your fault. My name is Mike Chapman. I'm a certified recovery life coach and also a survivor. Let's find hope and healing together. And welcome to the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. I'm Mike Chapman. I'm your host and founder of Polar Life Consulting. If you would like to join us on a live version of the podcast, you can find out more information on the website polarlifeconsulting.com/live. And we have audience members here. A reminder to the audience, if you want to put in a question, put that in the Q&A section here, and you can be as anonymous as you would like. We will only say your name if you manually type it in with your question. And with me today is my guest, James. James is a survivor of sexual trauma. He met his future wife in high school in Fort Wayne, Indiana. They have been married for 14 years. He and his wife have 4 children, and he is here today to share his story. Like we start most episodes of this podcast, we start with 4 questions. Now it's time for 4 questions, that part of the podcast when we get to know our guest a bit better by asking a few questions. Let's go. So, James, what is your favorite food memory?
My favorite food memory would have to be my grandmother on my mom's side. She was an excellent cook. She cooked for any and everybody that was hungry. She cooked soul food. So that's probably like my favorite food choice or item or what have you. She always stayed in the kitchen, and I always stayed in the kitchen. Always ate something that she was cooking. That was one of the
Did she
reasons
teach
why.
you how? Did she teach you how to cook
Yes,
some
she
of the
did.
dishes? She did.
My mom, my godmom, my aunt, and my grandmothers taught me how to cook. And I also have a business called LJ's Kitchen that me and my wife has. And, you know, we do different things from desserts and meal preps and catering and stuff like that as well.
Wonderful. So you made it a business as well. So what I know, soul food is this huge realm of dishes, part of Southern culture. And what were your favorite dishes that your grandma made?
She made the best fried chicken leg quarters, greens, especially spaghetti.
Yeah,
Was always good.
yeah. Wow. Yeah, I know. I've been to several soul food restaurants here in the South, and I was in DC for a while. And yes, so I've sampled all kinds of different soul food dishes, and a lot of them are really good. Some I
Yeah,
did try chitlins once, and no, that was a one-time thing. Nope, that's it.
they're pretty
An
good if they
acquired
made
taste.
right.
Right, yeah.
Pretty good,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. They may not have made them right, but yeah. So, what is your favorite Christmas or holiday memory?
I think for me, when I was younger, all of my aunts and uncles and cousins and stuff would get together at my grandmother's house, and she would cook a big dinner. Have ham and chitlins and greens, and just have a big old feast. And then, after my grandmother passed away, my aunt, which is her daughter, she took on the tradition, and we would go over there for the holidays, and of course, being up all day and night, prepping and cooking and stuff for Thanksgiving and Christmas and stuff like that. So that's always a good memory, and just hanging out with
Mm.
family and friends and stuff like that. And we always around Christmas and Thanksgiving time, we always would go around and say what we were thankful for and stuff like that. And so that's always
Right.
been a memory of mine.
Oh, that's nice. So, did they let you do any of the cooking?
Well, I stayed in the kitchen, so I would help like prep the stuff. So for like the
Ah,
yams and the chitlins and
right,
the
right.
cornbread and stuff like that.
So you were their sous chef, their assistant chef, right?
Yes, you can say that.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that's what I do now. When my kids are home, they're in their 20s. My daughter turns 30 this year. Oh, um, and yeah, they kind of take the lead, and then okay, what do you want me to? And I'll do prep, I'll do whatever, clean up as they go, whatever. I give the big responsibility to them, and then I just help out wherever they need me to help out.
Yes, less
So
stress on you.
yeah, exactly. They haven't figured it out yet. It's like, oh, we're in charge. It's like, yeah, you're in charge. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's great. So what is your favorite church or house of worship memory?
I have a lot. My godmom is actually a pastor, and she's been in my life ever since I was a newborn. That's all I know is church. I grew up in the church, and then the church I go to now, I grew up in that church. My aunts
Wow.
and my dad, my mother, and my grandmother was members and stuff like that.
So it's
I
really an
really don't
extension
have
of
like
your
a
family, really.
yeah, I really don't have like a certain. I guess I take that back. My favorite memory in church is when my pastor ordained me as a minister. That's probably like my favorite memory.
Oh, yes. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I know I got ordained as a deacon in our church back in the day, the church we used to go to. We moved about 2 hours away from that town. Yeah, that was very special when I got
Yeah,
ordained because yeah, it's just like that extra blessing that people look at you
yeah,
as not just some person, but someone who is there to help serve others. And it's like you get a calling. And yeah, those are such special ceremonies.
yes, it
Yeah,
is.
I know that was very memorable for me as well when that happened. That's awesome. What is your favorite scripture or any inspirational quote that has helped you on your spiritual journey? And what about it speaks to you?
I had got I think it was a birthday card, pastor and first lady. I think last year before last. And they was basically saying, congratulations to you, and we're proud of you, and we love you. And also in the card it said, "There's more glory." I think, trying to quote. I think it says, "There's more glory in your story," and I love that because,
Or glory in your story.
yes,
Wow.
because we all go through things in life, and I think that every trial and tribulation that we go through, there's always going to be glory in it, long as God is in it. And then my favorite scripture is definitely Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's my favorite
Right.
scripture.
Yeah, I like that too. That's the theme, overriding theme of this podcast is story and the
Mhm.
power of story. And even the fact that you're here sharing a part of your story with other men to
Yeah,
encourage them, there's such power in that because so many men think they're all alone in this
yeah,
struggle. And there's
absolutely.
not, it's 1 in 6, and that's even low. It's probably more than that. And they suffer in silence and they don't share and they don't come out and they don't have examples of men who've come out and say, yeah, this happened. It was really awful, but I'm getting through it and you can
Yeah,
too. And finding the hope
absolutely.
and the healing. So that's wonderful. And speaking of which, let's move on to your story. And as I tell all my guests, people's stories, the timeline can jump all over the place. I know my story does because that's how things unfolded. So I kind of go
Yeah,
back and forth. So wherever you want to share about your history, however much you want to share, and then talk about your healing journey when you started getting help and what things have worked and what things have not worked. If
mhm.
you've gone to therapy or whatever that you've done. Certain things help people, other things don't help at all. And so let me know how that's going, and then we'll lead into what you're doing these days.
For me, well, let me say this: I had a somewhat challenging or difficult rough childhood growing up. My mother,
Okay.
she dealt with addictions, the drugs and stuff like that. I bounced around from home to home, from family member to family member and stuff like that. Due to her, addiction and stuff like that, I was molested by her boyfriend. I was raped and sodomized by my own cousin at a young age. And that was like around 9 or 10 when all that happened. First, it started off with my mother's boyfriend, then my own cousin. And it was very traumatic, for me because, I knew that it was wrong, but didn't know the extent of how bad it was or how it would affect me later on in life. And,
Right. How old were you when that happened with your mom's boyfriend and your cousin? How old were you?
I was like around 9 or 10 when that happened.
And how old was your cousin?
My cousin, so if I was around 9, he was like around the same age. He was a year older than me, so probably around 10 or whatever.
Okay.
Once that happened, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my mother that what a boyfriend did to me, not at first, or my cousin. I didn't tell either one. I just kept it bottled up inside, acted like nothing happened when in reality it did. And one day I came home from school, and my wife at the time, she was my girlfriend. We was outside talking on the porch, and she was like, has anything ever been done to you? Has anybody touched you? Trying to play it off as if I don't know what she's talking about. But I ended up coming out and say yes, that I was molested by my mother's boyfriend, and she ended up telling my mother, and I told my girlfriend at the time, not to, because it already happened, and there's nothing can be done about it. And so told my mother, came home from school, told my mother what happened, and then we went to the police station and made a report and stuff like that. And at the time, the guy that molested me, he was in jail for some kind of crime he did or what have you. And so he was asked why he was incarcerated, what happened or was this true or whatever. Haven't heard nothing from the detective for years. And so, I just got curious and called the detective at the time was on the case. He said they dismissed the case of lack of evidence. And so, I was, mad and, hurt and sad and confused. Like, what if he's done this to other, children or somebody else's child, and
Right.
they haven't, spoke up about it or anything like that.
So why did your girlfriend bring up the subject in the first place with you?
I think we were outside on the porch and we were just having a deep heart to heart conversation, which I really don't remember what led up to, her asking me that. But
Does she have any abuse history or anything in her family? Like she had other relatives who were abused, or is
now I
that
don't know
part of
if
her own story?
and I don't know if anybody else in her family have, ever dealt with that. We really haven't, discussed that. And it was mainly about, me, because something that, I didn't feel comfortable opening up to her about. But eventually, I did. And I'm glad that I did.
Yeah. Now, when your mother found out, how did she react? What was her response to you?
When
And
she found out that,
did she believe you right away?
I think that she did. I never forget the look that she had on her face. She had a disgusted look on her face, not, pertaining to me, but that's what happened to her child. And, I can't believe, that, happened, to my child. I think, it was a little bit of that and, of her not being there due to her, drug activity and stuff like that. So I think that might have been, what was going through her mind at the time.
Right.
And just in, disbelief about, everything.
And did you tell either your girlfriend or your mother about the cousin?
You the crazy thing is that my mother ended up passing away in 2013. And so my mother never knew that I was raped and sodomized by my own cousin, which is my mother's sister's son. I didn't come out about it. Actually, me and my wife and my family, we was at Kohl's here in my hometown. And my
Mhm.
cousin had contacted me on Facebook Messenger out the blue, out of nowhere. And basically he was just saying sorry, for what we did, as so far as trying to insinuate as if I agreed to the things that that he was doing to me, which I never did agree to it. And so I didn't tell my wife because I didn't want her to judge me or think that because his cousin did that to him or to me, that, maybe we had something going on or something like that. But, just feeling like, embarrassed and, didn't want her to judge me. So I ended up telling, I believe it was one of my brothers, Daquan, the Survivor Circle group. And I think I told him and
Okay.
messaged him about it. And then my wife ended up finding out, because I think that she ended up looking at the message. And she ended up asking me, what happened and what was going on and stuff like that. And so that's how that came out, about my cousin.
Right. So when did you first start getting help for all these wounds, starting your healing journey? What brought that about?
You know what? I've never got any help, therapy, or counseling until, I want to say, maybe last year or the year before last, because I always thought I didn't need it. And, and not only on top of that, but just feeling embarrassed and ashamed of, things that, was done to me, and, didn't want to be criticized, really didn't want to talk about it,
Right.
painful, traumatic, past and stuff like that. But I'm so glad I did, because it gave me a different perspective on life and the trauma and stuff like that. And I had to understand that, the trauma that I went through, that's not who I am today.
Right.
And so,
Exactly.
going through the counseling and stuff like that, it did help tremendously. And I'm glad I went through with it.
So do you, what type of therapy is your counselor working? Is it just talk therapy, or are you doing different things? And what is really helping you and what hasn't really helped you?
Well, it's Christian based counseling and stuff like that. So they give you they do like a little survey to try to best match you or prepare you with the best counselor or therapist
Right.
that best suits you. And I actually had two. One ended up transitioning to somewhere else, or a different location or job, whatever. And
Right.
then the other guy that I went through, I've seen him in my local town, and been to his church several times, but never knew that he was a therapist and stuff like that. And so when we met, we hit it off great and stuff like that, and some of the things that we have in common. So that even made it even
Right.
better, to open up and about the stuff that he can relate to as well.
Right. You had this layer of trust because you already knew him
Yes,
out in the world a little bit. So I'm sure that helps. That's good.
yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. So I know you're part of Survivor Circle. Has that helped being in a community of other survivors? And how has that helped you?
Yes, yes, it is. You know what? Actually, really don't remember how all it went about. I think I was following one of the guys in the Survivor Circle group, and then somehow, I don't know how me and Robert connected, but he ended up asking people they wanted to share their stories or testimonies and stuff like that in the book and stuff like that. So I shared a little snippet piece about my story. But then
For his
I
book that he
really,
wrote.
yeah, that what the book that was wrote, everybody that wanted to give their
Right.
stories, is in the book, and the name and all that good stuff.
What
But
what's the title of that book again?
it's echoes.
Oh, Echoes. That's what I was
Yeah,
thinking. Okay.
no, you
So
see
you're
it.
part of that. Yes. Okay.
I say it.
Yeah, I'm very, very familiar with that. Yeah, and I
Yeah, so
remember that being developed.
it's very good. It's very explicit. Certain chapters,
Right.
whoever wrote who, and
Well,
stuff
even
like
this
that.
podcast, I put a little E rating because I mean, we talk about grown up stuff, and yeah, I try not to get graphic, at least too graphic, but we're talking about serious stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense. But yeah, I have not gotten a copy of that. That's like on my list of things to read. And yeah, but I've heard really good things about that book. They're very powerful, all the stories, and you're part of it. That's awesome.
Yes.
That's wonderful. So, what are you doing now these days? What are you doing either with recovery, or you mentioned LJ's Kitchen? So is that full time, or what all are you doing now?
Well, I work in healthcare, and I do that, full time. So I don't have the
Okay.
time to really, critique my craft, or, to fully, focus on my business, stuff like that. So, that's somewhat a bummer, but is going to come
So
one
that's
day.
kind
I
of
want to,
that's kind of a
yes,
side hustle for you.
yes, for
Yeah.
right now, because I would really love to have my own restaurant or food truck. That's always been my passion, ever since I was a little boy to have
Right.
a restaurant. Other than that, ministry. My family and I is constantly busy in ministry. Bible study, which we got tomorrow night, choir rehearsal, praise and worship on Sunday mornings, Sunday school. You name it,
So
we pretty much do it.
oh wow, so you're very involved in your
Yes.
local church. That's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. And I'm sure that's so fulfilling as well. And serving gets your mind off of the stuff,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
especially being involved in worship, that can be so healing. I know I served in choir, my church choir for a while back in the day, and yeah, that God would work so strongly in
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
process. Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. Remind our audience members, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. We don't have any just yet. Any words of advice for survivors out there that you think they need to hear from you?
I would say personally that you are not the person that you went through. You are a survivor. You're a overcomer. Greater is in you. Whatever happened to you, do not let it define your character and who you are. If that person, believes in Jesus Christ, and if the person doesn't, just know that you can overcome it and get some help. I think that not only black men but men in general. I think that sometimes we are embarrassed to seek help
Very
because
true.
we can feel like we've been judged or misunderstood or misguided, and
Right.
so we have the attitude is I don't need to go to counseling, I don't need to go to therapy, I'm good. But in deep and inside, we really killing ourselves,
Right.
and screaming for
Yeah,
help. Yeah,
there's that stigma. It's like, oh, if I go to therapy, everyone's going to think I'm crazy,
yes,
Yeah,
and that was me.
and yeah, me too. But no, I mean, if you're sick, you go to a doctor.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if you get cut, you go and you get stitches. If you get a broken arm, they have to set it and make it right so you can heal. And
Yeah,
it's the same thing, only it's in our brain.
absolutely.
So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I love that. That's great words of wisdom, James. I appreciate that. And no other questions. Any closing thoughts?
Find somebody that you can trust, somebody that you can, lean on, someone that, can, that you can trust with your information, your secrets and stuff like that. Just know that you're going to be okay. I was listening to a podcast earlier this morning, and the pastor was basically saying that just breathe. Breathe. It's okay. You're going
Right.
to get through it. Just breathe. Take one day at a time. You're going to get to your destination.
Right. Great words of wisdom. Telling your story, sharing it, even with one person,
Mm-hmm.
that it gets it out. It gets it out of your head. It gets it out in the open.
Yeah,
And that's where healing happens that's another power of story. When we share our story, they say a burden shared is a burden halved.
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so sharing it with even one other person. You don't have to do it
Yeah,
in a public forum like this necessarily, but just sharing it with someone gets it out, and they can be praying for you. They can be a support for you. And yeah, that healing all over the recovery community, they say healing happens in community.
mm,
So the more you can connect with others, connection is the key. So find that person that you can open
yeah.
up to. And that's the first step to the healing process. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, James, for being with
Thank you
us.
so much.
And a reminder to our audience, if you'd like to join us on future live podcasts, information on doing so is on the website polarlifeconsulting.com/live. And with that, thank you, James, and we'll
Thank you
see
so
you
much.
next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. If you would like to learn more about my coaching with Polar Life Consulting, where I provide one-on-one coaching and group coaching, both with a focus on healing for male survivors, reach out to me at polarlifeconsulting.com. That is polar spelled Polar. I would love to hear from you. I want to hear your story. If you would like your story featured on this podcast, contact me via my website. If you like this podcast, please rate and review because that's how other people can find me, and I really want to spread this message of healing and hope to others. And remember, you are not alone. Healing is possible, and the abuse was not your fault. Let me repeat that. The abuse was not your fault. See you next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast.